So we've covered the bundle of rights in the copyright in the composition that's protected by filing the Performing Arts or PA type of registration with the Copyright Office. But now let's talk about the bundle of rights in the copyright to the sound recording protected by filing the SR type of registration. These rights are very similar in many respects to the rights of the composition. Some of these will sound familiar to you. The first right in the bundle of rights for sound recording is the right to reproduce and distribute. No one can reproduce or distribute that sound recording without getting the permission of the sound recording copyright owner. Whereas in the case of the copyright in the composition, the co-publishing and administration agreement determines how the publisher and the songwriters get paid. In the case of the sound recording, most recording artists assign 100% interest in the recordings to the record company. And the recording agreement between the record company and the artist determines how the money is split between the two parties. In the case of the reproduction and distribution right of the sound recording copyright, the record company usually pays the artist 13 to 16% for the sale of the recordings that they distribute. But sometimes record companies want other companies and allow other companies to reproduce and distribute the works. You might have heard and seen the television commercials for compilation recordings or time-life series of recordings, which contain recordings from a number of different record companies. Well, in that instance, the record company might license a specific track to another manufacturer for a set fee or even for a royalty. Well, in that case, that is considered a third-party license. And as we discussed under the recording agreement lesson a couple of weeks ago, you know that third-party income is split 50-50 between the record company and the artist. Record labels will also license the right of reproduction and distribution to digital music services like Rhapsody, Spotify, and Rdio for on-demand streams. Many labels negotiate a certain percentage of the ad revenue of these various services, which they split with their artists under royalty terms determined by their contracts. Independent artists that own their own sound recordings also license these rights to digital music services through aggregators like Nimbit, TuneCore, or CD Baby. So, in the case of digital distribution of downloads, for instance with iTunes, doesn't the record company license those recordings? Could they be considered to license those recordings to iTunes to reproduce and distribute? Most recording agreements say that the sale through iTunes are, in fact, sales, just as if the record company reproduced and distributed the copies. And so therefore the artist is only paid 13 to 16% rather than the 50% if that digital download had been considered a license. But there have been lawsuits and decisions made in that regard, at least one that says that the sale of digital downloads through iTunes are in fact a license, not a sale. The sound recording copyright bundle of rights also includes the derivative right. No one can derive a new work incorporating elements of that sound recording without getting the permission of the sound recording copyright owner. Once again, this works in the area of sampling. The hip-hop genre was really the start of sampling, where prior copyrighted sound recordings were digitally lifted and placed into subsequent sound recordings. And in each case, even to this day, it's important for the prior sound recording copyright to be licensed to be put into the new recording. So the derivative right is becoming a very, very important right in the bundle of copyright rights for the owners of sound recordings. Just ask the estate and the heirs of the late James Brown, one of the most sampled artists of all time. The estate makes millions just from the licensing of the derivative rights alone. The licensing of recording for derivative works is also considered a third-party license. And in that case, the income from that type of use is 50-50 between the record company and the artist. The third right in the bundle of copyright interest owned by the sound recording copyright owner is the synchronization right. And just like the synchronization of a song into a visual image, the incorporation of a sound recording into a visual image, say a television commercial or a movie or a TV show, the rights have to be obtained from the owner of the sound recording. Usually there's maybe a flat fee payment for that. It could be a royalty, whatever the amount of income that's generated from the licensing of that use is usually split 50-50 between the record company and the artist. And the last right in the bundle of rights of the sound recording is the digital performance right. The digital performance right, we just talked about that a little earlier. That right was first enacted in 1995. Before that, record companies and artists never received any royalties from the playing of their recordings. But now, since 1995, any digital transmission of the sound recordings require a royalty payment to the record company and the artist. As a result of that legislation, the Recording Industry Association of America, the RIAA, which is a trade organization made up of record labels, established a brand new performance rights organization called Sound Exchange. Sound Exchange was formed specifically to collect the digital performance royalties from digital transmitters. Each year, Sound Exchange approaches digital transmitters like Sirius XM Radio, Pandora, cable television music channels, and they collect royalties to be split between record labels and artists. Once Sound Exchange determines how much out of that massive amount of revenue is allocable for each particular song, they divide the money 50% to the record label, 45% to the featured artist, and 5% to the unions, the American Federation of Musicians and the American Federation of Television and Radio Artists, so that the session vocalists and musicians can be paid. So, there you have it. The four primary income generating rights to the owner of the sound recording, the record labels and the artist. And those rights are the reproduction and distribution right, the derivative right, the synchronization right, and the digital performance right. The reproduction and distribution right is still very important to the owners of sound recordings. But there's another right of that bundle of four. The digital performance right will continue to grow in influence and revenue as the digital age continues to evolve.